Hey peeps, I'm Michelle.
Hey everyone, I'm Natalie.
Hey, what up? It's Faith.
Hey, Sydney.
Hey, it's Kat.
It's Bria.
Hey, it's Lori.
Hi everyone, it's Karina.
And this is the Red Lips and Mic Drops podcast.
Red lips and mic drops, thick hips and lip gloss. I'm talking issues and our thoughts. The world's unfair, so let's talk.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Red Lips and Mic Drops. This is episode 2. We're going to get right into it today. By the way, guys, as we move forward with this, we created this wheel that Faith loves.
Pain of my existence.
Okay, so the wheel is something that we created. Props to Sydney, who's not here with us today, but she sent this to us. We all reached out to our individual audiences to get feedback from you guys as to what you want to hear about and you want us to cover. So there's a whole wheel of topics, and I'm going to share that now. And we're going to talk about whatever pops up because we're going to do this on the fly. That's the point. This is a safe space. And whatever this may be, here it is. All right, I'm going to show the wheel. Whoop, here we go. Get ready for this. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yep. I frickin' this wheel. It's not sexual trauma today, but here we go. Is it going to work?
Ooh, we're in Vegas.
Yeah.
Why family size is your family's choice alone.
Oh,
Nice.
This is an interesting one.
yeah.
This is.
Okay, who wants to start? Why is family size? Okay, because this is like a judgmental thing
Sure.
for a lot of people. Like, why do you have such a big family, or why do you have such a small family?
I know, and it's so true.
Or why don't you have a family?
Exactly.
Why aren't you married yet? Why don't you have children yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine is why do you want more? That one really kicked me off.
Mine
I
was like,
do.
why do you have so many?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we have 5 collective children.
That's what we have.
And so for myself, with my parents having 2 biological kids, my family, pretty much everyone has, the standard 2.5 children. And
Where does the other half one go?
I know, right?
Forget that.
Yeah, that's the thing. And then we have the 5 kids, and it's like, oh, well, how are you going to get all those kids in the car? And why you have all these kids, you can't go on vacation, and you have all these kids. And then not all of them are biologically mine. And so my family would have trouble too, buying Christmas gifts because they're not technically my children. So it was always this thing of like our family size was someone else's, point of contention or choice.
Why do people
Their
shame so
problem.
much? Yeah, it's a projection of something.
Mhm.
Like, why do you care so much what other people do with their families? Like, why do you care so much? I mean, to these people who are judging.
Probably justifies something within themselves that they haven't explored. I mean, I get the question all the time. I mean, I had a family member look at me and say, "Oh, you're still not married yet? Like, what's wrong with you?" Right?
Wow.
Whoever, right? And then after that, it was, "Oh, you think you're still going to have a kid? You're way too old now." And then it was, so no matter what. And then I realized that was all from her own internal stuff. And so I have a girlfriend that has 5 children, and I'm Auntie Nat to all 5 of them, and my bank account is a lot lower because of that. Thank you. And I spoil all of them exactly the same. And she has her own family members that literally do not accept the fact that she got married a second time, had 4 kids with the first, got married a second time, and had another one. And yet I'm sitting here like the single, like Auntie Nat, buying all of them, spoiling them all the same, and she has family members that won't even acknowledge the newest baby. And
I think that is a cultural. I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but it is definitely brought down from generation to generation. Because my husband and I, we've been married for 15 years now, and we have a blended family, and we blended it very, very well. Whereas my side of the family, everyone's all accepted. They could care less. Like, oh, there's another one, bring another one in. We don't care, blah, 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 blah. And I treat them all as if I birthed each and every one of them. They are my babies. They're pride and joy. They're like I told my husband, I said, they're the reason why I married you. He's like, thanks. But now his side of the family is kind of different, because for the longest time it was, oh, they're not his. Oh, they're just stepchildren. I don't know if they just thought that we weren't going to make it that long or whatever, but like we did, we are, and we will continue going forward. Now we have grandchildren and stuff like that. And, you know, we try to be all inclusive with our family, but some people make it so fucking difficult to be able to do that. And so for the longest time, for many, many years, the kids would get like $10 or something like that from the great grandmother. Well, my own biological children wouldn't get that. So my husband and I would always have cash with us, and we'd always take envelopes, and we would always create these extra envelopes so that our children would never feel that pain. Because it's like, it's not their fault. It's not their problem. It's the other person's problem. And until we figure out a way to deal with it, or to talk about it, or to whatever with it, then it's just going to have to be. Now they're all grown up. Now everything is great. They accept them, blah, blah, blah. But it was just like when we first got together, it was excessively tough. And then you got to bring in the other parents, because that's a big thing. So for us, I spoke about it on the first podcast about, we lost our daughter, our 19-year-old daughter, in a car wreck. She was my stepdaughter. Loved her just the same, but now we have to go through this funeral process with her mom and stepfather. So now we have this extra added layer that we have to bring in. And when I met him, I knew that I wanted to make sure that me and his ex-wife were good. We were on good terms. I was never, ever, ever going to make those children decide who was going to come to the baby shower, who was going to come to the bridal shower, who was going to come to the wedding. Like, I was thinking these things ahead without even realizing I was thinking these things ahead. And so at the funeral, the gentleman told us, as we were figuring everything out, he goes, I've never had a blended family come in and make decisions and get out of here as quickly as you guys did. Wow. Like, it was just, we were like, okay, this is what she wants. This is what she does. We're not going to argue over a damn bit of it. Let's just get it done and move forward. And now we have monthly poker parties together.
That's awesome.
That's life and
that's
her
so good.
So, I mean, we still keep together. But I think it's all just a matter of perspective and just letting yourself, being okay with it's not a perfect family, being okay with, there's other people that are involved. Yeah, it's a bigger family. Yeah, it's whatever. Just let them be who they want to be and do their own thing. And you just worry about your own damn shit on your own damn rug.
Right. And I don't like this narrative too, that people have pushed, like, you know, when you say like, oh, your in-laws, and people always go, like they like give this like awful negative reaction. I'm like, your in-laws don't have to be your enemy. Like they don't have to be people you hate. Right. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like even with blended families, that's another thing. Oh, that's, it's like, okay, can we just not with the judgment? Like, I can't keep up.
What about the families that adopt? Or adopts like a child from another country, and then their family members or people are shaming them for that, or like, oh, why would you want to do that? Like, why would you?
Why wouldn't you?
Know? Right. Well, right. Well, right. You know, like I had a friend that adopted a little girl, and he had 3 other kids, and he's like, I love her more than my other kids. Yeah. And I was like, what? He's like, I just want to protect her. I love her. The other 3, I made them, and they're freaking little assholes. He's like, I hate them. And that's like, I don't want it to be public that he hates. Like, they're assholes. They're just like me. I love her more, you know?
Exactly why I'm not reproducing.
Yeah. It always comes back to bite you in the butt. Ridiculous.
For us, the tough part was always, when are you going to have another one? So we have one daughter, and it took so long for me to get pregnant with her. And we had almost resigned ourselves to the fact that we were not going to have kids. So we kind of started to plan for a life without children. And then I got pregnant. But then it was after I had her, it was, so when are you having another one? When are you having another one? I'm thinking, it took almost 5 years to have the first one. Like, do you not understand that this is a painful conversation? And even now thinking about it, it's painful that how long it took and the fact that we couldn't get pregnant after. And you know, like that piece of it is always, and even now when we're having the conversations about her not having a sibling and how guilty we feel about her not having a sibling, and you know, all that pain is still there. And have another one. Well, God damn it took so long for the first one. Just be happy there's one.
Right.
Yes, and people want you to live the way that they do. Like I've noticed that, like especially with my parents, because my therapist was like, you're living outside of their safety zone. You do realize that you've traveled, you left home immediately after graduating. Like before you even I didn't even go to my high school graduation. I was out. I moved 10 hours away from home down to Nashville from Pennsylvania, and I was out, and I was like, and it was the best thing I've ever done. But I was living out. They wanted me to live a certain way. Right. And they supported me. Don't get me wrong. They did support me, but I still get that narrative of when are you coming home? And when are, you know, my mother, you're not going to live, like, come on, Catherine, you're 30 years old. When are you going to have a child? And then I said, I don't know that it's for me, Mom. And she goes, oh, when did you turn out to be like this? Because I changed my mind on birthing a child and parenting a human. Now you're angry, but she's angry because she did it that way. Or maybe she didn't, maybe she's regretful that or maybe she's hurt or something. I don't know. Michelle, Natalie, you guys can speak to this better than I can, but.
Well, no, I think, but you said something there. So it's just like anything that we do, right? If we go against people's comfort zones, they are not going to support us. They are going to talk badly about us, or they might project their own stuff. I mean, I don't know how many people have projected their stuff onto me because of my success within the makeup industry, right? Because they couldn't go and do those things. So it's the same thing. And then people, because they want you to feel what they feel in that, and obviously the mothers of the group, what did they say? The feeling when you have the child, it's almost like ecstasy, that ecstasy. You don't know what it's like to have that love. You should want that, you know, and it's not for anyone to tell anybody.
Not all what it's cracked up to be.
Oh, hell no. There is no ecstasy when you push that.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, I don't know what ecstasy they're talking about, but it might have been like 9 months before.
Yeah.
That's it.
Then we have this.
And they lie about the whole 9 month thing. It's like 10 months. Let's get.
Oh my God! Right. I'm not even a mother. I'm like, yes.
That's the main thing for sure. Lie to us all the way through.
Every step.
About the controversy of having a hard time getting pregnant, right? And then people shaming you for having a hard time getting pregnant, and then people shaming you because you might not nurse your child, but they don't know why you're not nursing your child. You might not have been able to nurse your child. You know, like there's the shaming on every level, and shaming has become so rampant because of social media that if you want to find something to validate what you think, someone will help you do it now.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like,
whether you want them to or not.
Right. But you do know what I'm saying? But if you want to think one way and somebody's saying that's wrong to think that way or wrong to treat people that way, you'll find somebody that will tell you, oh, it's right. You should do that. You should bully people. You should, you know, there's the whole social dilemma thing showed you that they cater that to, you know, so it's, you know, it's sad that so many people are shamed for their families and what they choose to do with the size of their families, because ultimately it's no one's business. Some people might not have families because of their financial situation, and then they get shamed for that, right? Or, you know, so
I have clients that didn't have children because they experienced tremendous abuse as a child, and they did not want to be that abuser as a parent. They were afraid to be the abuser. I have clients that one particular right now that I'm working with, and her husband has tried for 2 years to have a child, and she just had a miscarriage. And so there's a lot of this that goes on, and then you get into the cultural aspect of it, with her being Hispanic. And it's like, now, why can't you give us a grandchild? And now inherently she did something wrong because her body couldn't maintain the pregnancy.
Yes.
So there's a lot that goes way deeper than what, how many car seats are in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd like to actually say something about that myself, because I was married for 7 years. And even though I knew early on I didn't really want kids, one of the reasons we never had kids was because of how toxic our relationship was. And I said, I do not want to bring a child into the situation. I do not like me putting up with it is one thing, but I don't want to put a child in the situation. And so by my choice, we never had kids. And then now I'm 35 and I still don't want kids. But in that particular situation, when I was married, it was a very conscious choice because of what the marriage was like.
Well, that's a great decision, Karina. Well, you made a great decision. And also, like, Karina's 35 and saying, I don't want children. And some people would be like, are you crazy? Like, and it's interesting because I feel that way too, Karina, and I'm 30 now. And it's like almost like that, the biological clock. Can we just stop talking about if we don't want to do it and it doesn't feel aligned with us, then why do it? And it's because way back when my mother was 20 when she got married, she's like, I couldn't even drink at my own wedding. And I'm like, not that you have to drink at your own wedding, but she was just making a point that I was so young. And I think sometimes honestly, if I'm being honest, sorry, Roxanne, I really do think sometimes she regrets how young she was and that she didn't get to experience all of this life. She didn't have this freedom. She stayed in her bubble. And I know if she hears this, she'll agree with me. I know she will, because she has hinted at that many of times. But again, it goes against everything that they knew. So it's very uncomfortable. But I don't think, and then they say you're selfish. It's not selfish to want to enjoy your freedom in life and not have, it's not. And you can still have freedom with children.
I think actually it's very, very smart if someone says they don't want to have children, then they don't have children. Because if you have that child out of that peer pressure, then you have this anger and animosity towards that child because you didn't really want the damn child, which sucks for the child. But so I find it ridiculous, honestly.
I have a friend that didn't have children because she had leukemia as a child, and then she's battled 6 or 7 different other cancers since then. And she froze her eggs and did the whole thing, because when you're older and you go through chemo, the insurance will pay for you to do that. And she's like, I don't want a child because I don't want them to go. They're most likely, with all my history, probably going to have to go through that. Why should I shame her for that?
Right.
Yeah.
No. Why should anyone shame her for that?
Yeah.
I actually did the opposite. So, and I'll publicly speak about this because I've said it to my stepmother's face, but my stepmom has a very rare disorder where she gets tumors all over her body. I don't even know what it's called, but just very rare. Her brother has mental retardation and is blind. There's diabetes, there's schizophrenia, there's everything under the sun. And she had, when I was 14 years old, I had to drop out of school for half a year to take care of her daughter, who wound up calling me mom. So because she didn't have the mental capacity to even think of caring for her child. And then 2 years later, she goes, oh, we're getting pregnant again. And I'm like, I'm moving out. Like, I moved out of my house when I was 16 years old because of this. So I was on the other end. And that's the only way that I can see where it's like, yeah, I did shame her for it, but there was a reason behind it. Whereas everybody else, it's like, they're really sticking to like the social programming and the cultural programming. And what I think is happening with you, Kat, too, and with me as well, is like, people have kids that are miserable having kids. They want to push it on everybody else because they're like, come down to my level.
I literally have
From what I found through my work and from what I've learned in work that I've done on myself as well, is that judgments are just either something that people are scared of or a deeper down desire that they're not aware of.
Right.
One of those two. So
yeah. That's so true, because for a long time I would be like, I had this, and this isn't me now, but I used to have that feeling of like, oh, people are ridiculous for having children. I did it at one point, like, oh my God, I can't believe you're having, no, I didn't say this to their face, but I would think it, like, I can't even believe they would do that. Why would you ruin your life like this? Aha, all your freedom's gone. And I'm owning that, this was years ago I would do this, but it was internally, I think I really wanted the experience, and I was just pushing that onto other people in my mind. Like, I really wanted to experience having a child. I definitely am not in that place now, but this was like pre my siblings having kids. So, I don't want that now, but I was like a projection, like you said, Karina, like a judgment in my mind of other people who decide to choose that avenue. And I'm like, why am I thinking like this? And then when I explored it, I'm like, oh, it's probably because I wanted that myself, like at that time. Right. But also I was extremely naive at that time. So that's probably I'm glad I didn't do it at that time, because I was engaged before. And I'm glad I did not walk. That was another thing I was judged for too. Why would you leave? Oh my God, you're a horrible person for not getting married. And I'm like, then how a bunch of people are like, you're really smart for not doing that. Because my mom has always said it's really easy to get in and it's really hard to get out. And it wasn't like her saying, making this decision for me, but I was like 25. So I was like, oh my God, it was awful. It was the worst time in my life, especially with the shaming and the judgment that went into it. Like, how could you ever walk away from that? I'm like, well, how could you get into something that you didn't feel right with? That was like, that's my response, is that if you didn't feel connected to it, or if it's kids, why would you, don't have a child if you don't, that's a human life. Like if you're not 100% on board with that, then don't force yourself to do it. Make sure. How do you know it's right? Can I ask this to the parents? I've always had this question. What is your reason for having a child? And this is not a judgmental question. I'm curious because everybody has different reasons. And I really am curious. Like why do people have children?
To be honest, I'll go first on this one.
Yeah, I love hearing. I love it.
To be honest, I never wanted children. I didn't want children in my entire life. My life was going to be, I was going to be this amazing powerhouse lawyer that was going to walk in the courtroom and I was just going to dominate. That was what my life was going to be. Needless to say, I do not ever want to be a lawyer. I do not want to go into that. I don't want that. That's not what I want. But I had a child. I had just turned 17 when I had my first child, and I was married that summer when I turned 17. And I married my husband, his father, and we were married for 6 years or 7 years, and we had 2 children. And then I finally divorced him because he was just a complete asshole. But anyway, still is. But we try. He has been to my house after 20 years. He's been to my house. We've spoken, and we're both still alive. So that's a lot. But for me, it wasn't necessarily that I had to have children. I think for me, it was because I moved around a lot when I was a child. We moved from place to place to place to place to place, school to school to school, state to state to state, like all the time. And I didn't have any education at all for like sex ed or understanding the reproductive system or anything like that. I didn't have any of that. And so I didn't even know how to go get on birth control at like 15, 16 years old. I didn't even know birth control existed because we had moved around so much. And of course I'm old enough, I'll show my age here. We didn't have cell phones either, so I couldn't go to Google's and look it all up.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things that all of a sudden I'm at the house and I have 2 heaping plates of food and my aunt is like, are you pregnant? I'm like, no, I don't think so. And then I took a test and sure enough I was.
Oh my God.
And then it was at that time, the options that were given to me were adoption or abortion. And I said, no. I created this. I will have him. And that was because I never watched children. I'd never changed another child in my entire life. I'd never babysat another child. I didn't anything. That was my first for a lot of things. So, and that is probably a lot different than a lot of people's experience, but I didn't want them.
Right.
They were going to be because I had moved around so much, I didn't want to put my children through that. But then I had a child and I'm like, well, all right, whatever. We're going to start.
And then you embraced it. And then you embraced it.
Right. I did.
Yeah.
I did. Absolutely did.
Can I ask a question? To you, Faith, was that some of that a belief given to you too? Like I know that they were going to be like in the way, a nuisance. Because I know some people that raise their kids always calling them that. And then they felt that.
No,
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
awful.
yeah, my parents.
No, I mean, I have a friend whose mother used to be like, "Oh, you're always in the way. You're such a nuisance."
That's
like,
horrible.
Oh gosh, no, my mom.
but people are products of like what happened to them, right? So
Right.
it probably happened to her mom. And then later on in life, she had her own child. And I remember being on the phone with her and she was like, "Oh, it is such a hassle. It's such a nuisance. It takes over." And I was like, "Whoa, you have to stop because,"
Yeah.
sorry about the dog. "You have to stop because that's what made you feel so insignificant your whole life. Don't do that now to someone else." So I'm just asking the question if Faith was okay.
No. My parents were great. I mean, they made me and my brother feel so loved. Like we had a great childhood. We just moved around a lot. So I missed those, like building roots and building foundations in my life. Like those come very difficult to me. So I've had to work on those a lot. But as far as for my parents, I just think that for me, it was more of the moving around. Like, I don't want to have to, because it was difficult to move around. Like, I always was the new kid every place I went. I always just want to be in the fly on the wall. I didn't want anyone to talk to me. I didn't want anyone to notice me because I knew that within 3-4 months I was going to be gone. You know, I don't want to build those connections because back in the day there was no cell phones. So if they mailed the letter out, I would be gone by the time I reached it. And then they would think that I didn't like them or whatever that was. So I just didn't want to have to deal with all that. So I'm like, I don't want my children to either. I wasn't even thinking that, hey, Faith, you can just plant your ass in an area and have kids and stay there. That was never a thought because that was never my life. So no, I didn't get that from my parents.
That's good. Lori, what about you? Like, and this was, you already kind of briefed us on that experience.
Yeah.
Did you know like that you, or was it kind of like, I know some people say like, oh, it's such a surprise. Like my sister-in-law and brother were like, oh, I can't believe it. We got knocked up on a cruise ship. Oh my God. I'm like, what?
Mine was amazing.
How are you surprised? Like, I don't understand.
Like, for me, early on, I was not on the having a child boat. I was kind of, I'm going to, like Faith, I'm going to, be something. And that's what I want my life to be. I was dating somebody before I met my husband and we had a pregnancy scare. And it was almost I'm going to say pregnancy scare, what have you. You're in your late teens and you're like, oh, is it positive? Is it negative? I'm late, right? Like, that's what I mean by a scare. And I think after that, it was like, oh, okay, well, there was a level of disappointment when it was negative. It's like, oh, okay. So does that mean that that's what I actually want? Not this, that I don't want them, that I actually do. And then as time went on and I met my husband, it was what was going to complete our family. If that makes sense. It's kind of, there was a missing piece of it. And, we had the dog and there was the two of us and we had bought the house. We weren't planning on getting married. We had just, we had decided that, what, we don't have to worry. It's just a certificate, that type of thing.
Yep.
And then we're like, it's the timing's right. Let's, we're stable. We've got the house, we have all those things. So all of the right things were in place for us to do that. And it just seemed like, we wanted to, it was logical, let's do this. And then we had our challenges and decided that I guess we're not going to. So then we got married, right? Like it just, our whole world just shifted completely because we couldn't have a child. And then as everything else kind of happened, then everything happened in the right order, if that makes sense. Perceived right order, right? Like, that's the thing too, right? Is the order that it all happens, it's, immediately after you get married, you get those questions too about, are you going to? We've already been dealing with this. It was not necessarily the, going to make or break our relationship. We had already, cars were in each other's names. We owned a house together. We had a dog. Like our life was so intertwined anyways. And, both families like, are you guys ever going to get married? Are you guys ever going to do that? When are you going to have kids? When are you going to do all of those things? And
when we feel like it.
What's that?
I said, when we feel like it.
Right. Whatever the hell we want to. It's none of your business, right? but we, you know, and I'm, you know, they talk about how when you take the pressure off, that's when things start to happen. And
Right.
we truly believe that we didn't have the pressure on us because we had made the decision not to have, like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We're not going to go through all the injections and all of those things. We were planning to have a life without a child. And then the pressure was off.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not going by, you know, having to your cycle and, you know, the rhythm, all of those different crazy things that you have to go through in order to make things work. Right.
Yeah. And Bria, I love that you say, like, Bria's always like, I want babies. And I'm like, that's awesome that you just proclaim it, because she doesn't care about anybody's judgment. Like, she wants her babies. She can have her babies. Right. And I love that. So what about you, Bria? Tell us about your mommyhood.
So I'm the opposite of all of you. I have wanted children since like the day I was born.
I do too.
But what I was gonna say was what really, and this is funny because if my parents ever hear this, they're gonna go, oh shit. But when I was 14 and I took care of my little sister and I had to drop out of school, it was just so natural and so easy. And I was just so in awe with this little baby that, you know, and it was like this normal thing for me. Okay, you wake up in the middle of the night, then you take a nap with the baby and it's super cute. And like in my brain, I'm like, this is way easier than going to school. Way easier than working a job. So when I was in, you know, high school, they were like, well, what do you want to be when you get older? And like, I was going to go to law school, all this other stuff. But what kept happening was I spoke my truth and I said, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. And everybody shamed me for it. It's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous too. It's like
they want you to become these big major things. Like, what are you going to be when you grow up? Mommy's not on that list. Daddy's not on that list. It's, you know, what's your career path?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I have to know at kindergarten.
That was like, well, what was funny was when I was a kid and my parents were like, how are you going to handle that? I started mapping out business plans. So really what I wanted to do was be an entrepreneur mom from home. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I'm doing now. Yeah. So, and I made a clear path. They were like, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? I'm like, well, this is how I'm going to do it. And so that's what I've been doing. But yeah, for me, it's just like about spending time with this little human that is just super curious and super funny. I swear, like if you love comedy, you'll love children. They're
my God, they're so funny. They're so funny.
The shit that comes out of their mouths sometimes. Oh my God.
And the way that they see the world is so innocent, and like they just have this love that it's like, I don't want that to be harmed. See, I think that's why I'm like also where I'm like, oh God, no, I can't. Like
I had my friend's sister's little one at her other sister's baby shower sitting on a swing with me. And she's like, so are you married? And I was like, no. She was like, so where do you live with your mom and dad? I'm like, no. She's like, so where do you live? And I was like, I live in a house. I live in my own place. And I have a dog and a cat. And she looked me dead in the eye and stroked my hair. She goes, you must be so alone. That's so bad for you. And then she ran in the house and announced to everyone, she's like, did you know Natalie lives alone? She must be so alone. And the sister was like horrified but laughing at the same time. And I was like, thank you for being that mirror for me, Lily. Thank you.
That's like that damsel in distress thing. Like, oh, woe is me. Like
she was like literally like 5 years old. And she's like,
oh my God.
You must be, or maybe, you must be so alone.
Oh,
so sad.
Hilarious.
Oh my God. Bria, you're dismissed. You're dismissed. Sorry, I know you have to go. I was just curious because you post about it a lot and I love it. I'm like, I love when people are honest with themselves and open about it.
Discussion right now because my boyfriend and I are planning that out and we've got it. That's why I love that you guys brought up the topic of blended families because he's got two, I've got two, and then we're adding another one. So we're in the process of blending our family. And it's insanely ridiculous, by the way. I'm like, this needs to be talked about more because the divorce rate is so high and the mom will not even work with me. She won't meet me. She won't anything. Like, I'm just the devil. So I'm like, okay, how's this going to be great?
Oh my God. There's always a challenge.
It's always a challenge. And it's there's so definitely.
You're in my prayers.
It's always a challenge. And it's my girlfriend that has her blended family is the judgment that came on her from people. And when she first, had an experience, and she got comments like, I think, I don't want to talk publicly because it's her story, and I don't know if she would be upset about it, but she got, she had lost a child, and people were like, oh, well, it's for the better. Like, like thinking
traumatic,
so traumatic. So we don't talk enough as women about, we don't support each other enough in those things. And how many people have lost children, and then people are like, oh, well, they already have 4 others. That doesn't matter.
It's so traumatic. It's like a biological thing that happens too. Like there's an actual bond, right, that occurs. Like
absolutely, with each of your children individually, you have a bond. Each of them.
So it's like, well, you should just be happy you have 4 others, or you should, you know what I mean, or and people say those things and they don't realize, oh, well, you don't really have. I have another friend that, unexpectedly got pregnant, and she was shamed by her family because she had just lost her job. Oh, well, you don't have the finances. Like, what and I think back and I'm like, where did this all stem from? Like, where did that all become? Like, where did it become okay to tell people like, oh, well, you should just be happy, like with the fact, like, you have other kids or whatever.
Is it was okay for my husband to assume the responsibility of my daughter, but I got the flack of like, oh, you're going to take all those kids on?
There, yeah.
Yes, Michelle. Yes, Michelle.
And my husband has 3 baby mamas. And I get along very well with 2 of them. One is just her own mess. She doesn't even get along with her own child. I raised her child for her. And so the 2 older kids, I was there when my daughter had her 2 children. Me and her mother were both there. 4th of July's and Christmases or whatever.
Graduation.
I can go over to my son's mom's house and hang out with their family. And so we all kind of get along, except for my youngest stepdaughter's mom. She has her own gamut of issues. And again, like I said, I raised her since she was like 3 until she was 16 and needed to see what her mom was all about, and had to allow that to transpire.
It's heartbreaking.
Yes, it's
to
terrible.
Let that go. Yes,
because her mom was
the outcome
person, and but we have a great relationship because I was there for everything that occurred in her life that was monumental for her. It was me that was there, except for she did have a baby right at the beginning of COVID, like in February. She had her grandson, and she lives in Virginia. And so I wasn't able to be out there when she had the baby. Because we wanted to go after, and then after was when everything hit the fan. But we did get to meet him. She brought him out here and all of that kind of stuff. But it's just those things that, again, my friends even said is like, oh, you're going to take all his kids on?
Yeah.
I know, I'm just going to pick and choose.
Yeah, right. Like, no, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing. Like,
I mean, 1 for like maybe 2. Yeah.
And then just like bringing my daughter in, and again, she was in our home, and age-wise, she's kind of like sandwiched in between my 2 biological kids, my daughter from my ex-husband and my son from my current husband. And so she was just one of the kids. It was seamless for us. They were just the kids. But it still was problematic in some places, like even with my mother-in-law, because she has 9 children, and one of her children she lost custody of when she was a child because of her own bullshit. And so she always took to that child more so than the other kids, because she had her personal feelings that went into my stepdaughter being raised by me. So she always took like a personal thing with her over all of the other children.
Yeah.
Overcompensating.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Terribly, terribly. Even to this day. But it's because of it's her own stuff. But yeah, we've been through and we've done just like Faith. They're all kids, and they were. If I'm gonna yell at you, I'm gonna yell at all of you. If you're gonna step a foot in my house, you are all under the radar. And even when my niece would come around, it was so cute because she's the white kid of the crowd, because all of my kids are, you know, various shades of brown, and my daughter, my sister's daughter, her dad's Caucasian, so she would come around and she would just be a part of the flock. We just could identify her a little easier.
I'm going to say something similar because, you know, my dad's Mexican, full Mexican. He immigrated here from Mexico, and I was raised with my mom for the most part. And I am like culturally white. I didn't learn much from my culture from my Mexican side of my family, a little bit, but not much. And it's like, did my mom fail me for not teaching me more about the Mexican culture? I don't feel like she did. She raised me the way that she knew how to raise me, and I was raised well by her. So
yeah, I was just curious to see what you guys would think about that, because I was kind of like taken aback. I was like, oh my God, like I'm sitting here watching this thinking that's a beautiful thing that you took in a child and you loved this child. And I understood that.
To tell you the truth is so funny because I know a lot of the issues with white people or other ethnicities adopting Black children is the hair thing, right? So they don't know how to do the hair. And I've seen some Black folks fuck up some Black hair. And
right.
so
Like with any race, right?
Just to tell you like that, I tell my girls, because, you know, they still come to me to cut their hair and to do stuff with their hair. And when they go and have someone do their hair, and I go, yeah, okay. That's what you get. That's what you get for going over there.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of Black people not know how to do Black hair, and they don't get discriminated against because they don't know how to do Black hair.
Right. It's true though. It's true because, you know, like the hot celebs, like Kylie Jenner has a mixed baby, and they always make like this big thing about the edges, you know, like how to do edges. And it's a big thing. And I'm like, I think it's so precious when she posts these videos of like, and I know this is like Kylie Jenner here and she has 400 nannies, but like, I just think it's precious to see the process of like learning about that. So I love that. Michelle.
From a makeup standpoint in the beauty industry, and Michelle knows since we were both, she's former and I'm in it. I have makeup artists that will not work with women of color because they were never trained to work with women of color. And I am a proponent of, you better know every undertone and skin tone, okay, of any person of any type of, for every shade of color known to mankind, if you want to deem yourself a makeup artist. I'm very passionate about that. I'm very public about that.
Yeah. Photographers as well.
So, yes, photographers as well. And then I've actually had women of color say, I was afraid to book you because I wasn't sure if you were able to work with me. And so again, it's like this whole culture of if we want to deem ourselves certain things, we better make sure that we are educated in all of it.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Like I can't just say, oh, I'm a great makeup artist. Oh, well, I can't do your makeup because I don't know. I don't understand how to work with your skin tone.
Right. Also a therapist as well. So like a lot of therapists, you know, we have to take cultural competency exams and courses when there's really not a lot of cultural competent clinicians out there to tell you the truth, because they don't go into a person's behavior and kind of pull apart, is it based upon some cultural belief that they just say you need to then adopt what I feel is right in behavior, and they don't see if it's attached to culture. Because when someone sees me and they're of another ethnicity and weren't necessarily their families raised in America, we go through all of that. I also, even depending on the neighborhoods you grew up in, cities you grew up in, places you were, we go through that whole lineage, because those things build who you are and what you believe. So we may not believe the same things, and you have to understand that.
Yeah. 8 strangers on the internet coming together for intimate conversations about difficult topics with soft hearts and strong voices. This is Red Lips and Mic Drops.
Red lips and mic drops, thick hips and lip gloss. I'm talking issues and our thoughts. The world's unfair, so let's talk. Red lips and mic drops, thick hips and lip gloss. I'm talking issues and our thoughts. The world's unfair, so let's talk.